What's up, guys? It's your favorite Kiwicoach, and welcome to this video. I wanted to do a little bit more in depth of a more drive and hold rotational swing versus a kind of jump stall flip swing. I know I've already done a few videos on this, but I want to go a little bit more in depth and just give you guys some more things to kind of think about. So let's kind of get into it. So I got Chev Reevy here on the left of the screen, and then I got a Japanese professional golfer here on the right of the screen. So we're going to go over a little bit how the body works in transition. We're not going to get into over the minutia of the backswing or anything like that. We're just strictly focusing on the downswing. So let's take them both up to the top of the swing. So what we're going to notice here in transition is definitely a difference between how the pelvis works as well as the knees work, okay? This is super important for you guys to understand, because if you guys can get this, you guys are going to have a lot better chance of having a stable rate of closure, which just means the toe is not going to be turning over very rapidly, right? Which is consistency. So anyways, let's go into it. So first off, I want to see what Shez is doing in transition. Let's go take a look at his pelvic line. So he's fairly level at this point, right? So let's kind of see how it starts working in transition. So let's actually make a smaller line. So let's say it's somewhere right around here, right? Now let's also put in terms of where he's moving, right? Let's put another line right about here just so we can see how much he's pushing forward. So as he starts moving forward, we're not really seeing the left side pelvis lowering, right? He's not getting left pelvic tilt, which just means the left side of pelvis, again, like I said, is not lowering in transition. Now from here, we can see that he's continuing to break this line, and pretty much right after the P5 position, let's erase these, we're seeing that the left side pelvis is now higher than the right side pelvis, right? Now, if you guys have followed me for a while, you know if the left side pelvis is higher than the right side pelvis, you're coming out of your natural lordosis of the lumbar spine, and it's going to be really hard to rotate the mid-spine or thoracic, right? So he's doing the classic moves that get someone into a stalled out position. Now from here as well, we can see a few things. If we take a look at his knee from here, he's gone a little bit into external rotation, so there's a little bit of that natural golf swing still left in him from what his coach has probably destroyed. But his trail side knee has gone a little bit and kicked a little bit too much into internal rotation too early. So whenever we get the trail side knee working into internal rotation too early, it makes the left side pelvis get a little bit higher than the right. And we're starting to get out of that lordosis, and then we're getting into a position where we're not going to be able to rotate, and all we can really do is start to extend. And you guys will see that here in a sec. So as we keep him going into the golf ball, we're going to notice from this frame to this frame, he has not rotated a lot, so the pelvis is not rotating, and he's done nothing but extend forward. So we're going to do it again. See? So not a lot of rotation, he's just extending, correct? So he's not around here. His body lines are very close to the target at this point. There's not a lot of rotation here, and he's really just relying on supination, timing of this late supination move to release the club head and to hit functional shots, right? Now our argument is under pressure, that's not going to be the most consistent way to do it when you're relying on a late timing of this supination, or a late flip is what I like to call it. From here, we can see on this next view that his right hand is very much over on top of the left forearm. This is definitely a classic flip and roll release pattern. And I would argue that it's not very consistent, right? And then the next view as well, if we take a look at right about here, we can see that the head still has not released, right? That's a very classic look of someone who's stalled out. You don't see the head releasing very much. They're trying to stay in their spine angle, quote unquote. Maybe that's what they've been taught. And there's just a lot of stall out and a lot of torque on the lumbar spine. I would say that's going to eventually possibly lead into some injury. Now let's go take a look at the Japanese golfer that has been watching some of our content and has been watching a bunch of other golf instructors who teach the rotational swing, and he's really starting to get it, and we're going to see a huge difference in the way that the body moves, right? So in transition, the first thing, let's look at pelvic line, right? So he's basically at a fairly level neutral pelvis at this point, right? Now in transition, let's look to see what happens. So as we start transitioning, even before we get to the left arm parallel position, we can see that there's left pelvic tilt here, right? So the left side pelvis is now lower than the trail side pelvis. Now, just to give you guys a little forewarning, this Japanese professional golfer is exaggerating this, right? He's trying to get a feel. He's actually making a full swing here, but he's just got onto this kind of topic, so he's exaggerating a little bit more than you would see most people do it, but I think you guys can still get a really good understanding of what he's doing. So as this left pelvic tilt, watch this. See, he's getting into left pelvic tilt, he's also getting into anterior pelvic tilt, which is the pelvis tilting from the front end slightly downward, right? Which then gets him a little bit of that natural lordosis of the lumbar spine, which is going to allow him to be able to rotate the mid-spine very well. Now, as he's doing all this, let's also start looking at his knees, right? So let's go zoom in here. And let's take note, let's kind of just look at this trail side knee, or lead side knee, excuse me, and see what it's doing. So as he's getting left pelvic tilt, he's squatting down, right? He's going to anterior pelvic tilt. We're seeing that this lead side knee is going into external rotation, right? So it's clearing out. Now the reason why he can get as much external rotation as he's getting is because he has the left pelvic tilt, he has the anterior pelvic tilt, and the lordosis of the spine. So he's going to be able to rotate here. At the same time he's doing that, let's go zoom in and look at the trail side knee, and let's watch what it's doing. So as he's doing this, notice how the trail side knee is staying fairly stable, right? It's actually gone a little bit into external rotation, but it's definitely not kicked into internal rotation at this point. Now right about here when the hands, so from this position, which is left arm parallel, by the time the hands get to P6, which is hands level to hips, which is right about here, we can start seeing that the knee is now, the trail side knee is starting to kick into internal rotation, right? So watch this. See how it's starting to kick into internal rotation? Cool. Now at this P6 position, if we zoom out a little bit, we'll see that he's still in left pelvic tilt here, and he's still in anterior pelvic tilt, right? So the left side pelvis is definitely lower than the right. Now from here, as he starts coming into the golf ball, let's notice what his pelvis line is doing first, then we'll kind of go over what the knees are doing. So as he gets into impact, we're starting to see that this pelvis line is starting to level out slightly. Then as he gets into impact, we can see that his pelvis line is pretty much fairly neutral here, right? He's pretty much has a level pelvis at this point from the face-on view of this golf swing. Now from here we can start seeing, now he's starting to get the right side pelvic tilt, right? The right side is slightly higher or lower than the left side. And from here, once he gets to this position, we can see that the head is starting to release a little bit more than Shez did. And now we're starting to see that the right arm is above the left, which is what we want. We want this release pattern. We just don't want it right after the ball. That means that you had a flip roll and you had a late supination move. Cool. So let's go back and look at from P6 into the ball. Let's take a look at what the knees are starting to do here too as well. So if we zoom in here on this lead side knee, as he gets into impact, we can see that it's still clearing out and it's still maintaining its flexion, I like to call it, right? This is flexion right here of the knee. He's still maintaining it, but once we get into impact, we're going to start seeing this start to straighten a little bit, right? So it's subtly changed from here to here. Now again, guys, like I stated earlier, he is exaggerating this move a little bit because it is new to him. So I think in a normal swing, for most golfers who do these moves, his knee would be a little bit straighter at this point, right after impact, just to give you guys a little heads up. But then from here, we can start seeing that he's definitely going into extension of this lead side knee, right? It's basically going out of flexion and going into extension. Now let's go take a look at the trail side knee at this point. So at P6, right about here, let's start seeing how this trail side knee is going to start kicking into internal rotation, right? So it's kicking forward, not excessively, right? And then right about here in a normal golf swing, we would probably see these knees starting to kiss, right? These two would be touching each other. But again, like I stated earlier, he's exaggerating this a little bit because it is a new move, right? Cool. Now the last thing I want to take note of is notice how he has not had a large flip here, right? So the right forearm is subtly on top of the left, but it's not like Shez. If we go take a look at Shez here, there's a difference between this release and this release right here. Also, let's look at the body too and the way the body's going at this point. Notice how Shez right here is actually in posterior pelvic tilt. So if we take a look, notice how he's a little bit in posterior pelvic tilt, which just means that the pelvis line is pushing downwards from the back end, right? That's what you can also think about that as crappy posture, right? Shitty posture, you probably heard it before. If we look at this, pelvis is a lot more neutral here, which is a lot better for the lumbar spine in supporting it throughout through this part of the golf swing, okay? Shez over here is probably going to have some lumbar spine issues here if he continues to swing this way. I think this is kind of an old video. I don't know what his swing is like nowadays, but definitely was I think was going to run into some issues if he kept doing that. I haven't even seen him on the tour, so I don't think he's on the PGA Tour anymore. But so, anyways, cool. So that's some from transition down into impact, and then a little bit through impact. That's definitely some differences between the drive hold rotational swing and the jump stall flip swing. I hope that would brought a little bit more into light of what is going on. I'm definitely a big advocate of more of the rotational drive and hold swing, just because I think that I honestly think it's better for the body. I think it's more biomechanically sound. I think definitely in terms of rate of closure, it's a lot better because you're not having a rapid closure of the toe, which means 85% of the initial starting line for irons is where that face angle is pointing. So if you're rapidly closing it, it's going to be harder to be more consistent if it was a little bit more stable and closing at a slower rate, which is what we want, right? So anyways, guys, hopefully that brought to light on why I like the drive hole rotational swing and why I'm not really a huge fan of the jump stall flip swing. Either one can work. Obviously, Chev review was on the tour, so I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying that I think long-term stability of a player's career, it's going to be a lot more benefit to having that drive hole rotational swing. Alright guys, if you haven't already, feel free to smash that like button, leave me a comment, let me know if you guys like these types of videos, if you guys want to see some more on this topic as well. And as always guys, you see that little red subscribe button down there, please go give that thing a hit. We need some more subscribers. Alright guys, have a good day.